And so as you see, we're recording, and I thank you all very much on behalf of the Coalition for Peace Action, founded now over 40 years ago, formally in 1980. And we are delighted to have you all here with us and excited for our afternoon. We want to get started with our program, and there's much to hear about and much to celebrate. So especially celebrating our Carol Allen and hearing from Representative Tom Malinowski, who will join us in a little while. So welcome to you all. If you have, I will ask Bob Moore to, since it's already a little bit after 2, if he's ready to begin his portion of the program, and to let people know whether or not the chat is available and in which way it should be available. So Bob, welcome our esteemed executive director, who is celebrating over 40 years as our executive director, and welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Irene. It's good to be with you, and I apologize for the glitches. It seems like technology just does that to us sometimes. How dare it? It is an honor to be here, and so we aren't seeing any chat box. Is that what's happening in terms of the other technical glitch?
No,
oh, no
I just was saying that I didn't remember what the order of chat was. So please.
Okay, well, I'm pleased. Every annual gathering, I do an annual report highlighting some of our accomplishments and the challenges ahead. And that's what I plan to do. But before I start on that, I want to recognize that today is the 40th anniversary of the Nuclear Freeze Rally, March and Rally in New York City at Central Park. And that ended up being the largest demonstration in US history, 1 million people. By the way, that was according to the FBI, because I, among others, was being investigated as a communist dupe. So there you have it. That was just the way things were in those days, but it was a big success. And your Coalition for Peace Action chartered an entire train to take our supporters there. 1,400 people went on our train to that event, and so it's something that we want to acknowledge and celebrate, that we're still working on those goals and more here 40 years later. Despite the pandemic, we've sponsored or co-sponsored many successful high-impact events since the spring of 2021. The first one I want to mention, and Danielle, if you have the highlights of accomplishments, could you just screen share that now so they can follow along for this part before I get to the challenges? So thank you, Danielle. And so you'll see as it comes up that the first thing we list is a rally against Asian hate. And tragically, that was at the very end of March last year, March 27th. And it's shameful that we have these kinds of things still happening in the United States of America, hate crimes being committed, and yet we know that they are increasing, not only staying, but they're increasing. And so at that particular point, there was a big surge of Asian hate, and we stood in solidarity and we're proud to co-sponsor that rally that was attended by over 3,000 people at Heinz Plaza. Then we did education and action on restoring the Iran nuclear agreement. I think all of you remember that former President Trump withdrew from that agreement in 2018, and we think that was a drastic mistake and failure. And in fact, we still haven't recovered from that mistake. President Biden wants to re-enter the agreement once these restraints that are highly verifiable come back into place, but it keeps hitting snags. And so we don't yet have it. And by it taking this long, unfortunately, the Iranians have begun to lose patience, but we have been lobbying intensively this winter and spring, including getting an update on it from one of our wonderful experts, Professor Rob Goldston, on April 13th at our renewal gathering, but then following that with numerous lobby appointments, some of which we did on our own and some of which we did in cooperation with wonderful partners like the National Iranian American Council and J Street. And believe me, partnership and collaboration is something that I'm very proud of. I think there's nothing better than doing things that way. It energizes us, it strengthens us. So we're still working, but it's not looking as promising at the moment, but we're not going to give up. Then I want to mention our No Wars, No Warming climate crisis events. And we did a number of them over this past year. The first one you'll see there is a rally for divestment from fossil fuels that we were urging Princeton University to do. We were collaborating in that case with a campus group that was advocating for that. And so that's the third item down on what Danielle has posted. And then not long after that, we did a webinar that was presented by Dr. Steve Pacala on the Net Zero Project, which we're very proud that that's something that's under Princeton University's umbrella. So in terms of their academic work, their scientific work, I think that's a really great initiative. And Dr. Pacala gave us an outstanding presentation on the 29th of April. And then we had another one in Earth Day of this year. That one I was just describing was part of our Earth Day observance in 2021. Now for 2022, on April 24th, we did an Earth Day observance in collaboration with the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton on the ecology of war. And that was another highly successful event. And so we feel that this is really a campaign that we want to keep working on and that is intersectional, that these are the two major threats to life on Earth, is the nuclear weapons danger and the climate catastrophe. Then later last spring, early summer rather, we had our annual membership gathering, and you can see that we had Representative Ro Khanna. Now that was on June 10th of 2021. He's in many ways sort of the top leader for peace legislation in the United States. So we were deeply, deeply honored to have him as our keynote speaker, but we also honored Daniel Ellsberg, who has spoken for us and supported our work in various ways. And so we honored him with a Lifetime Achievement in Peacemaking Award last year, and we're going to be doing that fairly shortly with our own Carol Allen today. So then, starting in September of last year and also going into December of that year, we were celebrating my 40th anniversary as executive director, which I was very flattered by. It was great to hear the support for the leadership that I've been trying to share these past 40 years and to have that recognized by the larger community too. So the Princeton Town Council and the mayor adopted a resolution declaring September 8th, the actual day of my anniversary, as you can see there, as a Reverend Bob Moore Day in Princeton. And then the New Jersey General Assembly passed a resolution, and our own Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman also read something into the congressional record. So all these things really juiced me up for another 40 years, hopefully, but we'll see how long I can keep going. Then our successful annual conference in multi-faith service. So that was our founding event all the way back in the fall of 1980, and we've kept doing it every single year since then. So this was our 42nd time doing it on last November 14th, and it featured Sister Simone Campbell, who was rated, and actually one of the reasons we were as the faith leader with the most influence on our incoming president, just recently, Joe Biden. So she was excellent, an excellent speaker, both at the morning multi-faith service and also at the afternoon conference. Then our Rally for Democracy. And again, we collaborated with Indivisible Cranberry. I think Laura Zerflu, who's the leader of that group, may be joining us if she's not on already. We are so grateful for that kind of collaboration because despite that time of year, obviously January 6th is often not a pleasant time to be outdoors, but we did it. And over 500 people attended that rally on the anniversary of the insurrection at our own US Capitol. Then Martin Luther King Multi-Faith Service. And that was on January 17th of this year. And between, one of the things we really like doing is, even though that was on Zoom initially, we also posted the recording, just like we're recording this event. And by doing that, we were able to reach another 100 people. And so a total of 350 people were reached. I'm almost to the end of my successes part. Let me just share these last two. We did a number of webinars. I'm not going to go over them in detail because it would take too much time, but they were webinars on diplomacy, especially in the context of the growing danger of war with Ukraine, which, as you all know, is now in its third month. It's now 3 months in. And including, we did several programs about the nuclear weapons danger, the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And so those were very well attended. One other thing we did this spring of 2022 was to hold rallies in early March. And those rallies were in Princeton and in Philadelphia, and each of them was attended by over 200 people, including many Ukrainian Americans. And so that was really gratifying as well. Let me just turn now to a few challenges ahead, and maybe the best way to introduce that is by telling you about another successful rally that we just had yesterday at Heinz Plaza in the middle of Princeton. And that was a rally against the mass shootings that have been happening and against the American epidemic of gun violence. And it is an epidemic that's getting worse. It's going from very bad to much worse is the way I would characterize it. And so our gun violence prevention work right now has emerged as something that we're putting a lot of effort, and we're privileged to be the lead group coordinating all of the work throughout New Jersey through our Ceasefire New Jersey project. And so we're really excited about that. It's a daunting challenge. We're working on bills to restrain guns, and that's a very big challenge. There's very big opposition to that, as you all know, from the NRA and others. And so we are working on a new package of gun safety bills. We passed 14 in 2018 and 2019 when Governor Murphy his first 2 years in office, and then the pandemic hit. And so for public health reasons, things sort of slowed down for a while. But now, obviously, gun violence didn't slow down. In fact, it got far worse, as I said. Last year, we had 45,000 Americans killed at the hand of a gun. That's 125 per day. One American dies every 12 minutes at the hand of a gun. And as far as mass shootings, those are now averaging 2 per day. 2 per day. So this is clearly a problem that is totally out of hand, that we as the American people can and should get a handle on. Other developed countries don't have this problem, and if they start to have it, they do something right away. Our rate of gun violence here in America per capita is 25 times higher than what it is in those developed countries. That's shameful, I think. So we really need to take these steps to pass these new bills. It's an 8-bill package, and the first hearing on it is tomorrow, and we're hoping to move really, really fast on this. So this is a very big challenge, and we need everyone's support, everyone on this meeting and anybody else you can think of reaching out to. What we're hearing, the governor has been promoting this package for a year now, and we've been working with him. But there's reluctance, especially after last November's election. As you know, the Democrats lost seats in the state legislature, and the governor's election was much closer than anybody expected. So some are a little worried about doing things that are going to generate opposition. But hey, the NRA is going to oppose no matter what we do. They opposed and tried to rescind New Jersey's assault weapons ban all the way back in 1993, 2 years after it was passed into law. And we helped lead the fight that beat the NRA at that time and defeated their effort to rescind the ban. So it still exists today. So the kind of horrifying shootings that have happened in Uvalde and in Buffalo in recent weeks, those could not be done by somebody purchasing an assault weapon here in New Jersey. They are banned and have been since 1991. And I'm proud of those successes, and we need to build on them. So we have the state level to work on. And if you haven't already, please take a look at the top of our Take Action section of our webpage, peacecoalition.org, our website. Because that gives you the ability in just 1 minute to email all 3 of your state legislators at this critical moment. As I said, the first hearing on the first bill, which is one to hold the gun industry accountable, just like they were finally held accountable recently in Connecticut. It took 10 years, but those lawsuits finally succeeded in forcing Remington to pay so much money for selling their assault weapons and promoting them to these young men who were just looking for ways to show how macho they were and had mental problems and everything else. They shouldn't have been able to buy them, but they did. Well, they were held accountable, and they had to make such a large settlement to the families that that they actually have gone bankrupt now. And finally, Irene, I see you getting anxious. I'm almost done. The Peace Voter Campaign. We have key House races in District 7. We'll be hearing from Representative Malinowski in just a few minutes, and then the Senate race in Pennsylvania. So that's just a quick overview of the challenges ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Bob. I think on our agenda, happily, is to hear from Carol Hague. And if Carol, would you introduce yourself and give us your wisdom? And thanks, Bob. It was we do a lot of work at the Coalition for Peace Action, and there was a lot to report. So we will speak more about that at the tail end of our program as well. Carol, please go ahead.
I'm Reverend Carol Hague. It is my delight to thank everybody here, because without the support of all of us as members and followers and cheerleaders for the coalition, that all of this work can be done. At the new member event in March, with Putin's nuclear threats ringing in our ears, I made an appeal for your support of the coalition's work to prevent nuclear weapons. Today, with the images of children slaughtered in their classrooms in our own country, searing our eyes, I appeal to you for your support of the coalition's work to end gun violence. At the rally yesterday, the stories that people told and the message of taking action were absolutely powerful. That rally would not have happened had the coalition not been there. People were inspired to move, to act, to call, to go to the Congress people and to make the bills go forward to reduce those incredible weapons. The need for the peace action has never been greater. And together we can and we must help our country live up to the values it stands for. So once again, Carl and I will place an additional donation to our annual contribution to the coalition. And I invite all of you to do the same. If we together can raise $850, with this group on this Zoom call, it will be tripled by 2 very generous members. And I say shame on us if that's all we can do. I challenge all of us to together to raise $2,500 to match the match that's been offered to us. So I give you some time to write your check, to make a donation online, to call the office, to give them your credit card, however it works for you. Here's our $100, double it, raise it, contribute to making our peace action really active. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. And you'll see that Danielle has posted a link into our chat so that you can easily see in which way you might, if you are able to make your contribution today. Thank you so much in advance.
Irene, we also were going to pause for 2 minutes or so folks could make their donation right now.
Yes.
If they're willing to, and Danielle's going to put some peace music on while we're waiting those couple minutes.
Okay.
Music to write checks by.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Dan. So thank you, everybody, in advance for, or after the fact, or in advance for your generosity. Thank you very much, Carol, for your inspiring introduction to us to do what we always want to do, make this coalition stronger and more powerful by the help of all of you who are here today supporting us. Bob Moore, we have excellent next part of our program in presenting our Lifetime of Peacemaking Award to Carol Allen, and Bob Moore will begin. So I have to see what.
Yes, thank you, Irene, and I am honored to be able to be honoring such a spectacular peacemaker. Carol was one of the people who's been involved during my entire 40 years here. And she has played just about every role you can imagine during that 40 years. She has helped host potluck. She has helped put on events. She has gotten space for our events, especially at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, and been very helpful in that regard. She has been part of our annual donor drive committee. For a number of years, she co-chaired our advocacy committee. And so, you know, Carol is just somebody who is ready at a moment's notice to do whatever needs to be done. And she doesn't do it for recognition, but we want to recognize her. She does it because she believes so deeply and passionately in the cause of peace. And I think her life during these 40 plus years now that I've known her and her involvement in the Coalition for Peace Action, I just can't think of anybody who has been there in a more dedicated way than Carol Kiger Allen. Irene, let me turn it back over to you.
And I'd like to add a few personal remarks. I take advantage of the microphone here to my dear friend, Carol Kiger Allen, by profession an economist, by heart an actual peacemaker. She lives the world of her beliefs. She's kind and honorable, fair, feisty, defends her positions. She listens. She seeks to find understanding and to reach common understanding with the goal toward moving our peace agenda forward. I'm honored to know you, Carol, and to call you my dear friend. And congratulations to you for all that you have done. You represent the best of what an advocate and activist is all about. Please put to everyone else, if you want to make a comment or to Carol, please put that into the chat and we'll make sure that she sees all of your commentary. Thank you, Carol. Please say a few words.
Thank you. We all know that peace action is a group effort. The coalition has terrific leadership, and we also get encouragement from scientific experts. But all of you listening today are part of a great organization of activists striving to end war and gun violence, reduce military spending, and abolish nuclear weapons. Thank you.
And Danielle, please put up once again the award that we have for Carol so that she can see it, and that we will it's framed and we will deliver it in person to you. The Coalition for Peace Action is pleased to honor Carol Kiger Allen with an award for lifetime achievement for her outstanding contributions to the pursuit of peace, June 12th, 2022. Thank you, Carol. You're the best. We're warming up to greet our congressman, Representative Tom Malinowski. I don't know if he's had a chance to get on yet. Oh,
yeah, I see Lisa's there and the co-hosts.
Okay, and big hugs to Carol from her family, both on Zoom and in person. And let's give an applause for Carol Allen. Everybody, give a little shake your hands. Okay. When we're ready, Bob Moore, do you see?
Yeah, I see Lisa and the co-hosts. So
Okay.
Lisa, can you unmute and make yourself visible?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am searching for a congressman, so hold tight. He should be on any minute. I'm going to give him a call and see what's going on.
Okay, that's great. We'll fill ourselves in here until he's able to join us. We are so fortunate to be able to have a very timely representative speaker, keynote speaker today in light of national events and world events. And so we're all very much looking forward to, I see so many of you here, and don't forget to write your chat, your comments to Carol and your checks. So, Bob, did you want to add anything more? I know I asked you to speed things along a little bit before because I was concerned for the time, but
I just see Danielle put into the chat box that she made
you froze
Tom
up.
a co-host. Danielle, did you see Tom on there?
I think Lisa came in as Tom and changed the name.
Oh, okay. All right. So she's chasing him down, and let me just build a little bit while we're waiting for him to arrive on some of the background. He's been a very important champion of gun safety. And we all know how extremely important that is in a country that's as backward on that issue as our country has proven to be. So he is fighting. He just spoke at a major rally in Summit last Friday night. He's a real champion on this issue and believes in it deeply. But also, as you know, he is a former diplomat. He was an Assistant Secretary of State for Human Rights in the Obama administration and did a fabulous job in that capacity. And finally, I want to say that he also has been a real champion for the Iran nuclear agreement. He supports our work to reduce and eliminate nuclear weapons in a larger way, but this has been a special interest of his, partly because Ambassador Malley is the lead negotiator for the United States on trying to get us back into that agreement. And Representative Malinowski was kind enough before Ambassador Malley went over for those negotiations to have him be available to us. And quite a few people from Malinowski's district, but even though we're not in the district, a number of our experts came. And so it was really quite exciting to be able to directly interact with our chief negotiator for renewing the Iran nuclear agreement. And so, I just think very highly of him. If you go to our webpage and scroll through the photos at the top, you'll see one of our delegation meeting with Representative Malinowski. So he's been very accessible to us. Okay, and I see he's now in the waiting room. Danielle, can you admit him?
Okay, I'd like to add a few words of welcome to our representative, Tom Malinowski, who is a longtime friend of the Coalition for Peace Action, and as Bob has said, represents the views that Bob has just referred to. And I'm going to say thank you to Tom, and we're all looking forward very much to hearing your comments. You are a respected source for, we've seen you on television, we've seen you in the press, people reach out to you to get the last news and opinions on the topics that we're also very interested in. So without further delay, let us welcome Representative Tom Malinowski from the 7th Congressional District of New Jersey with a nice round of applause, a shaking of hands. Welcome, Tom. And let me find you on my screen. Well, I guess someone else will find you on the screen and bring you up live but there you are, live and in person. Welcome from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene.
Yeah.
Hey, I guess I just logged on at the end of your introduction. That was good time.
Oh, well, we said all wonderful things about you. How great.
Well, great. It's great to be with you. I don't have as much time with you as I would like. And I would love to spend as much of it as possible hearing from you all and taking Q&A, because there's so much going on around the world. And I'm certainly not going to be able to touch on it in a big speech unless I talk for an hour, and I certainly don't want to do that. So
15 to 20 minutes is good.
well, I don't even want to do that because I only have half an hour, and I'd much rather spend most of that.
Please
taking
proceed.
your specific questions.
Yes.
I think, look, we're in a dangerous moment right now for the United States and for the entire world. President Biden, in his campaign and as president, has often spoken about a contest between democracy and authoritarianism. And I think that's, I used to be a presidential speechwriter, and I know the difference between a line that just sounds good and something that is precise. And I actually think that one is precise. I think that's what's happening right now. And it's happening both within our country and it is happening among countries. It's the defining contest in the international community right now. We have a global order that was largely devised by the United States and our democratic allies after the Second World War, that was never perfect, that was often fragile, but that had at its foundation some pretty good and important principles, including increasingly specific and powerful standards of human rights that define how governments can and cannot treat their people, and rules very much rooted in our World War II experience that prohibit the type of state-to-state aggression that resulted in that conflict. The basic idea that that countries can't change borders with tanks. And right now, all of those standards are being challenged. The war in Ukraine is the most obvious example, where you have a totalitarian dictator, and I use that word precisely as well, who decided that he could not stand the success of a democracy on his borders, and decided that he wanted to break free of the constraints of that post-World War II order. And the result is the biggest land war between two large states, two large armies that we have seen in Europe, or pretty much anywhere in the world since the Second World War. I think the Biden administration did a tremendously good job leading up to the war in warning the world that it was likely to happen, in trying to prevent it, by building a coalition, by making clear to the Russian government that there would be very significant consequences if they did this terrible thing, by helping Ukraine prepare itself to defend its territory. And I think we are right today to continue to help Ukraine in the ways that we have, even though it means that we are absorbing very significant costs ourselves. We're sanctioning Russia, but we're also being sanctioned economically. Every American right now who is paying $5 a gallon for gas is in large part paying the price of our decision to stand with Ukraine against this aggression, against this attempt to take away their freedom. And again, I think it was the right thing to do. And it's an important message to send to the world that the United States and our democratic allies are prepared to accept some sacrifices at home to stand up for these principles. I'm absolutely certain that China is watching this conflict. They are watching to see our actions, whether we have the strength and the unity at home to do what is necessary here. And so far, fingers crossed, Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump notwithstanding, I think we've done a reasonably good job of maintaining that unity. I drive around my district, and even in the rural red areas, I see more Ukraine flags flying than Trump flags flying. And I want to keep it that way. So that's, that's the big issue, I think, the defining issue right now on the international front. I've been active in the Congress, obviously supporting what is a broad consensus that we should back Ukraine through economic and military assistance. I have been very active for a long time, since before the war, in urging economic sanctions that are directed at corruption in Russia. And recently I led in the House the passage of legislation that would enable or begin to enable the Biden administration to not just block and freeze the assets of these Russian oligarchs and institutions that we have sanctioned, but to actually, in some cases, seize them and use the proceeds to help in the reconstruction of Ukraine. This is going to be an effort that will cost tens of billions of dollars. And it's certainly not fair to ask the Ukrainian people to shoulder the entire burden. This war was not their fault. It's not fair to ask the American people or the French people or the German people to shoulder the entire burden. I think justice demands that we find a way to, in effect, use Putin's money to rebuild the country that he is destroying. And so I've managed to get that process in motion. It's legally complicated, but I think we will get there. There's a lot more going on around the world. I know many people on this call have been very strong supporters of the United States getting back into mutual compliance with the nuclear agreement with Iran. I speak regularly with our negotiators in the State Department and can certainly answer any questions you might have about the status of that process. It is basically in a kind of holding pattern right now. Most of the details of the nuclear agreement have been agreed to by both sides, but there are other issues that have intruded that are making it difficult. I am still hopeful. I still want very much to see a return to mutual compliance, not because I thought the Iran deal was perfect, but because I think the alternative is an extremely dangerous situation for the United States and our allies. So I think I'll leave it there because I want to let you guys guide the conversation and tell me what's on your mind and give you the opportunity to ask me what we're doing on the issues you care about, and I'll do my very best to answer fully and directly. Thank you again so much, Irene.
Thank you, Tom. And Mark Tolo is receiving the questions from the gathering, and we'll begin to sort through them and see. We had a little issue with connectivity before, but we were hoping that everything goes smoothly. Thank you for your remarks. Please, people, please do send in your questions via the chat to Mark Tolo, and I hand it over to Mark and hope that everything comes through okay. Mark, do you have some questions already posted for Congressman?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. There are several questions. Some of them we might be able to combine here. One on asking for a little bit of elaboration on getting to peace in Ukraine without too much damage to the country of Ukraine in the meantime, in terms of what they might have to give up or something. And a second question on that is, how can we generate more enthusiasm in the United States for helping Ukraine? And a suggestion here is a time for victory gardens again, which might not be a bad solution for the inflation problems as well. So anyway, any reaction to that, please?
Sure. I think there's a lot of support for Ukraine. We're such a divided country, and so I've been impressed by the extent to which this is still mostly bipartisan. And by that I mean it's 100% or 99% of the Democrats and maybe half the Republicans, and that's pretty good for where we are in our political climate. And I think where it's harder is making the connection in people's minds between the war and the sacrifices they're otherwise being asked to make. We had a big meeting early on in the conflict where we had all of the senior administration officials come and brief Congress, and all of the Republican members in the House that were there were just getting up one after another and demanding that the Biden administration ban Russian oil. This was before that decision was made. And I remember I got up and I turned to them and I said, look, I agree with you guys. Like, Biden needs to ban Russian oil, but will any of you stand up and promise me right now that when he does that and gas prices skyrocket, you're not going to blame him the day after, right? You're basically, I know what you're going to do. You're going to demand that he ban the oil, and the moment he does it, you're going to blame him for the gas prices. And that's, of course, exactly what has happened. So I think what we need is political leaders on both sides of the aisle, as hard as it is in our politics to ask anyone for sacrifice, to communicate that even as we try to get those gas prices down and the food prices down, food and gas are very related, it's totally on us to do that. It's not enough to just use the Ukraine war as an excuse. But at the same time, let's remember America's being tested here. The American people are being tested here by these dictators. And we do need to show them that we are capable of absorbing a little bit of sacrifice in order to help people who are being asked to sacrifice, or who are choosing to sacrifice far more than $1 or $2 a gallon at the gas pump in order to protect freedom. And on your first question, look, it is not up to us to say what Ukraine should give up. It's their country, it's their lives. And, when people start talking about Ukraine giving up territory for peace, remember, territory means people. When you're giving up territory, you're giving up the people who live on that territory, or turning them into permanent refugees. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. It's also not for us to tell them that they must fight for a particular piece of territory, but it is not our right to tell them that they cannot fight for their sovereign territory that was taken from them by violence for greed. If they make the decision democratically, as they have thus far, that this is worth fighting for, then I think we need to continue to make the decision to help them in the way that we have.
Mark, you have
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. A related question on Ukraine. That is, Ukraine is a grain supplier to the world. What can be done to make that more, to solve the problem of hunger in the world that might be related to the lack of Ukrainian grain?
So, this is, in this sense, it is kind of a global conflict, right? Because Putin is trying to sorry, somebody muted me. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So the only way Putin can win, now that it's clear that he can't win just by brute military force, is by imposing so much economic cost on the rest of the world that that we give up on this, that we start compelling Ukraine to, in effect, give in to him. And one way in which he's doing that is by trying to block the ports, to block the export of Ukrainian grain. We've all learned how important Ukraine is to international food markets, food and fertilizer, in the last few months. So, short of sending the US Navy into the Black Sea, which I don't think we're going to do, what we can do is spend an awful lot of money to try to help the countries that are most impacted absorb the costs of this. And a lot of you heard about the $40 billion package for Ukraine that we passed in the Congress. That's not all for Ukraine. Some of that money is to deal with the global food crisis. And I think we got to step up the pressure on Putin to allow the grain to leave. And I think my little concept of seizing those assets can be good leverage here, because I think, right now going into this, Putin's expectation would have been that if we sanctioned his central bank reserves, for example, if we froze the assets of the oligarchs that support him, yeah, that would be painful, but it would be temporary, because technically the money would still belong to Russia. And once this crisis is resolved, it would be unfrozen and it would be theirs again. But I think if we go to Russia and say, no, you're never going to see this stuff again. We have given ourselves the legal authority to permanently seize it and give the keys to those yachts to Zelensky. I think that gives us some leverage to make some of these secondary demands, like let the grain leave those ports. So that's what I'd be doing.
Earlier, you mentioned refugees. Could you give an overall view of the refugee situation in the world based on your experience and the way you keep track of it now? And how would you highlight the main causes? I mean, conflict obviously is one.
It's
possibly famine, possibly climate. How would you look at the causes and what needs to be done?
The causes are conflict, political repression, and increasingly climate. Famine is usually a product of one of those three things. There's no good reason for any country to experience famine unless it's fundamentally misgoverned in conflict or subjected to massive climate stress. The United States right now is not doing our part yet to address these things. As you all know, we shut down refugee admissions during the Trump administration. And while the Biden administration has raised the quota, the annual quota of the number of refugees that we can take back to its normal historical levels, even above them a little bit, the system that absorbs those refugees has not yet been rebuilt. There are all kinds of local and national organizations that were basically funded by the US government to help refugees resettle in the United States. And 2 or 3 years with no refugees arriving led to the collapse of that system, which Biden is trying to rebuild. And he's trying to rebuild it at a moment when we've absorbed tens of thousands of Afghans because of the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, and now an additional promise to absorb up to 100,000 Ukrainians. I'm not sure if we're going to need to take 100,000, frankly. I think people forget that most of the Ukrainians who left are not seeking permanent resettlement in another country. They're seeking temporary refuge and safety until they can go back and help rebuild their country. But certainly we will take some Ukrainians. And that leaves all of the other places that aren't getting as much attention, but are still producing refugees: Ethiopia, Burma, just to name a few. So we got to do our part. I think it's good for America. By the way, we're at a moment when the thing America's economy needs probably more than anything else is people. We need a bigger workforce to match our ambitions. Every small business owner I talk to, that's their number one concern. When we were bringing in the Afghans, many of whom came through Fort Dix in New Jersey, I had chambers of commerce coming to me and saying, yeah, can we get some of them? We need workers. And so this is not just a matter of social justice. This is a matter of self-interest. And so I've been a vocal advocate for the refugee program, for legal immigration of all types. and not just because it's a moral commitment, but because it's something we practically need as a country right now. I think I can take one more, if that's okay.
Okay.
Or maybe two quick
Could
ones.
we
I just have a few.
Could we shift to gun violence prevention?
Sure.
Right now, that's a
Yeah.
very, very big issue, of course. And what hope for agreement might there be in terms of Congress, in terms of whatever the Senate can do, and would the House agree to that? How do you see the future playing out?
I don't expect anything from the Senate beyond very modest improvements. They are talking about some improvements to the background check, the violent history check system, for example, with waiting periods for 18 to 21-year-olds. It's miserably modest, actually. Possibly some closure of what's known as the boyfriend loophole to the background check system, and increases in federal funding for mental health, which is what the Republicans say is needed. I don't agree with them that that's the answer to school shootings, but I'm certainly in favor of increases to mental health funding, so I'll take it for other reasons. And beyond that, well, as modest as that is, you asked will the House vote for it? Yes, and I will vote for it because I will take any step forward, no matter how small. But what we need is something much more fundamental. We need, at the federal level, laws equivalent to. My dog wants to go out, and he just told me by knocking everything off of my kitchen table. We need the laws that we have in New Jersey to be passed across the country. And if you want to ask me how we can get that to happen, I'll tell you. We got to elect 2 more senators who are willing to reform the filibuster, just 2. And we got to keep a majority in the House of Representatives that's committed to gun violence prevention.
Absolutely. Tom, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Before you leave, let us all show our appreciation and our sending you all positive energies in your work today and what you have to face to get back, to stay on and continue to represent your district and all of New Jersey and the United States.
Thank you so very much.
Thank
Really
you,
adore
and thank you,
you.
Lisa, for helping to coordinate all of this with us, with our Representative Tom Malinowski, Congressional District 7 in New Jersey.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye.
But coalition members, please stay on. Bob Moore's electricity went out for a bit, but I think he's back on now. If I'm not.
Yes, I'm here.
You're okay. The vagaries, the good news about Zoom is that we all get to see each other's faces, for heaven's sake, which we haven't seen for a very long time. I'm really happy to see you all and to be seen and not viewed, as they say. So Bob Moore, please.
Yes, well, thank you, Irene, and I'm sorry I missed probably 2/3 of Representative Malinowski's talk, but I really enjoy listening to him. He doesn't pander. He's not trying to just say, oh, what's going to please this group and articulate that. He has deep convictions, and mostly those convictions align with ours. And so I appreciate his integrity, his honesty. And sometimes also you can make the perfect the enemy of the good. So there have been some issues where we haven't been in total alignment with him, but on the whole, he's been very good on our issues. So we definitely don't want somebody on the far right taking that seat over. And so stay tuned. We're going to be running a peace voter campaign in that district, and with Ed Aguilar's leadership. Ed is on. He's the director of our Philadelphia office. We're also planning a peace voter campaign for the very critical US Senate race in Pennsylvania. So again, I apologize, I couldn't hear everything, but I liked what Representative Malinowski said about the gun violence issue at the end. We need to stay on it. And there's a lot more distance to go, but anything we can get that's progress is a good thing. At the federal level, especially, I think we have a very good chance of making considerably more progress in New Jersey laws. And let me just give you a quick snippet of some of the things about New Jersey's laws before we close, because I know this issue is on everyone's mind. I said a few things about it at yesterday's rally. I think I mentioned that had over 350 people, thanks to all of you who were there. These laws make a real difference. And let me give you one example. In 2018, the first year that we were working with Governor Murphy, I already mentioned the assault weapons ban, of course, which has, I don't know if you've noticed, but the states with the stronger laws tend to have a lot fewer mass shootings and other acts of gun violence. So nobody can even buy an assault weapon here, but they still can get other weapons. And sometimes they go across the river into Philadelphia, into Pennsylvania, or through what's called the Iron Pipeline from the states with much looser laws in the South. They can get weapons. And so one of the laws that was passed in that first batch, which was also a package of 8, by the way, was called the Irpo law, Extreme Risk Protection Act. Extraction Order, Extreme Risk Protection Order, Irpo. They were also nicknamed the Red Flag laws. So we had that, and it came into effect in 2019. This lets a family member, friend, law enforcement go to a judge and ask that, and report that somebody is in danger, in imminent danger of using that gun to harm themselves or others, and the judge can then authorize the removal of that gun, hopefully before anything bad happens. So that law, at this point, nearly 3 years into its operation, it has been invoked nearly 1,000 times in New Jersey. And let me tell you about one of those, because we often think about gun violence problems being in places like our urban areas, which I'm sure do suffer a disproportionate share of them. But this was a young man in Princeton in 2019, the first year the law was in effect. He threatened on Facebook to go do a mass shooting at a Walmart in Hamilton, New Jersey, just a stone's throw from where most of us are. And law enforcement saw it. And they then went to a judge and said, this young man, and tragically, a lot of these shooters are young men, this young man looks like he's in grave danger of doing a mass shooting. And the judge authorized them. They went to the home in Princeton and they removed a huge number of weapons. So I think there's very strong evidence that we've already seen mass shootings prevented here in New Jersey because of these kinds of laws. I think I already mentioned as well the case of Remington. And that's the law that's actually going to have the first hearing tomorrow morning at 10. And so that's going to go before the Senate Judiciary Committee in the New Jersey Senate. The prime sponsor is the majority leader of the New Jersey Senate, who we met with not long ago, Senator Teresa Ruiz. She's really fantastic. And so she's going to bat on this very important bill. This would allow us to sue gun manufacturers for damage that they do. And this is what succeeded in Connecticut, because they had a similar law. We don't have one yet. It's enabled people that are hurt to file, and the December families, the Newtown shooting victims, their families got a very big settlement, and it's bankrupted Remington. And I think that's a very good way to start having fewer assault weapons manufactured in the United States. So we've got bills like that. We've got the safe storage bill, which our ceasefire project has played the leading role on. We just had a very important meeting with the prime sponsor, a senator who is also a former law enforcement officer. Senator Cryan is going to be the lead sponsor. He's introducing it on Monday. And this mandates that you store a gun in your home, if you choose to have one in your home, that it be locked. at all times. And what this does is it means a child can't get its hands on it and have an accidental shooting. It means somebody who is suicidal, much lower chance that you're going to succeed if you make a suicide attempt, if it's with anything other than a gun. Finally, domestic violence has escalated tragically during this epidemic. So there would be much less chance if there's not a gun in the home that can be easily accessed. So these laws really, really matter. We're working hard on them. Dolores Phillips is working day in and day out, practically around the clock, our legislative director. So please stay tuned. Those of you who haven't, please send your emails to our elected officials. So this is an area that Tom only touched on. I was back on by then very briefly at the end, and I wanted to amplify it. Let me just say one more thing about the assault weapons ban. When the NRA tried to defeat it, we were one of the first 2 states to have one. California was the other. We were almost at the same time. The NRA tried to rescind that, and we defeated it, as I mentioned earlier. When we beat the NRA in its effort to rescind that bill, it was the very next year that the national assault weapons ban passed. And sadly, it had a 10-year expiration date on it. Something I was vaguely aware of, but I only came across the article in the Journal of Trauma Medicine recently. During those 10 years, the number of shootings with assault weapons in the United States decreased by 70%. Now, almost no law is going to solve 100% of a problem, but to have it go down by that much, wouldn't that be such a blessing if we had that as a national law again now? These young men, and it's been mostly young men, couldn't go get one so easily at such a young age. At a minimum, as President Biden has already said, let's raise the age to buy one of those monstrous things to 21 at least. And there's more and more scientific research that shows the neurobiology of these young men. They just don't have the impulse control. So I just wanted to kind of underline that, since Representative Malinowski's time was limited. He's very strong on these issues. He's very well informed, as I'm sure you got an impression of that. So this is going to be a major focus for us between now and the end of the month, because then the New Jersey legislature usually takes off for a few months after the end of June, which is the budget deadline. So please stay with us, watch for your alerts, stay involved. We also are still working on the Iran nuclear agreement. As Representative Malinowski said, it's hit some snags recently, and now Iran has started to turn off the inspection cameras. This is very, very worrisome. And if things don't get back on track soon, many experts are saying Iran may only be weeks away, and maybe even less than that, and having enough material to make a single nuclear bomb. Now, keep in mind, that doesn't mean that it's fashioned into a workable bomb, that there's design work, there's other things involved, and a delivery vehicle. So we're probably talking another 1 to 2 years, even if it has accumulated enough. But still, the window will not stay open forever. And if we want to try to make the Middle East more secure from having nuclear war emerge, we need to renew this agreement. So that's something that I'm especially impressed with Representative Malinowski, as I said before he came on. I'm especially impressed with how much on top of things he is. As he said himself, he's in close touch with the diplomats, and he's trying to get this to happen. So those are just a few thoughts I had and wanted to share with you. I also wanted to say a big thank you to all of you. We gave special recognition to Carol Allen for her lifetime achievements in peacemaking. But in my mind, you're all heroes. You all are doing what America needs to have happen to become a more peaceful and sane country. So keep up the good work. Keep up your support. We really appreciate everything each and every one of you is doing, including being on this membership gathering today. So do help us spread the word. Probably early this week, we'll be sending out a recording of our rally yesterday on Heinz Plaza. when you get those kinds of things, please help us spread the word. These are very good information in those kinds of videos from a really interesting range of speakers, going from Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, State Senator Andrew Zwicker, to the leader, Raisa, of the March for Our Lives group here in New Jersey. They were all really outstanding, a number of different faith leaders besides myself. So it's a really good opportunity to help spread the word. Please do help us with reaching out to get that message spread. Thank you.
Give yourselves a hand, everybody. Thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.